What pod people, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together we're going to walk you through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing good. It's my birthday week.
It is. Happy birthday to the Tim.
Happy birthday to me.
All right. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the whole series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. Also, just a quick note about pronunciations. We're going to pronounce things wrong. Neither Tim nor I have listened to the audiobooks, and I haven't listened to any of the interviews, so I don't know how these words are pronounced. And we've lived with these names and these cities and whatnot for past a decade.
Yeah, and some of us
15 years maybe. It's
some
been
of
a
us
while.
are a little dyslexic, so we do weird things with letters in our mind anyway. That would be me.
Yeah.
So apologies.
So I hope it's not too distracting. And if you want to send us corrections, we can try to incorporate them. I make no promises. But, just kind of move past it. We're all here to love and support each other and just enjoy this thing that we all really love. So
that's why we're here.
So hopefully it's not too bad, and we do apologize, but that's how it is. We're going to get things wrong. We just are.
We're human.
All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
In this episode, we're going to be covering chapters 18 and 19, where the group is being hunted and they are forced to take shelter in the most dangerous of places.
All right. Chapter 18 is called the Caemlyn Road, and the icon is the party Trolloc, or maybe the rock and rollock.
Rock and roll.
Either way, that Trolloc is happy to be here.
Yes, he is. All right, let's get into it. Here's a quick summary of Chapter 18 to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. The party flees Barrelon and heads towards Caemlyn. On the third day, they hear Trolloc horn sound. Land goes to scout and discovers that there are at least 500 Trollocs that have surrounded them. Land mentions that he knows a place where the Trollocs won't follow them, but Moraine flat out refuses. They head north and the Trolloc horns grow even closer until they run smack dab into a group of Trollocs led by a Myrddraal. They battle the Trollocs, and things get really dicey until Lan manages to behead the Myrddraal, and the Trollocs fall. They barely have time to catch their breath when the horns start to sound again. They are met with a horde of Trollocs, led by 3 Myrddraal this time, and Moraine faces them down with her Angro. She creates an earthquake that sends the ground rolling in waves towards the Shadow Spawn, and creates a wall of fire to act as a barrier between them and the humans. Using that much power completely exhausts Moraine, and she can barely stay in her saddle. Lan argues with her that they have no choice but to go with his plan and hide where the Trollocs won't follow. Moraine does not want to go there, but even she has to admit that she isn't strong enough for anything else. She uses the last of her strength to lay a false trail for the Myrddraal to follow, and Lan leads them to the gates of a great ruined city called Shadar Logoth.
All right, let's get this chapter started. So Nynaeve lecturing Moraine about herbs is hilarious. Because Moraine does not care.
And Nynaeve's just like, and I got this for this, and this will take care of that.
She's so stubborn that she is just going to keep going. And Moraine's just trying to get away from her. It reminds me of in high school when you're at a party and, the dorky kid, attaches themselves to you and follows you around. And you're trying to go from, person to person, just trying to ditch this kid. But they keep following you, talking about random stuff. That's Nynaeve and Moraine in this scene.
Yeah.
It's cute and funny and just, Nynaeve.
Overall, the writing in this chapter is really good. I really think it's tight.
Yeah.
Robert Jordan does a good job of ratcheting up the tension with the horns sounding, and we keep getting chased and the horns get closer. It's just the suspense just goes up notch by notch by notch.
Yeah, definitely.
It's convenient that Lan tells everybody exactly where they're headed for once. The first time in this entire book, we actually find out when we get here, then we're going to go here.
Right, so that when they separate, they all know where to go.
Exactly, because if you hadn't, then what happens the next few chapters would be bad. But yeah.
That is convenient. I know.
Just a little convenient.
So Lan goes out to scout, and he tells Moraine to keep everyone moving. And then he says, "You'll know if I fail." Okay, that's an understatement. If Lan fails and gets killed, Moraine most definitely will know because of the warder bond. She'll be
Right.
like in this crazy mad grief. So when the warders lose their Aes Sedai, they kind of go berserker.
Into a mad rage.
Yeah.
It's like they go insane.
Right, but then when an Aes Sedai loses her warder, it's not normal grief. It's like extra.
Right.
Where it can take years to recover. And she's in like this deep, deep depression.
Yeah, it's like a piece of her has literally been cut out.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
You'll know if I fail. Yeah, okay. That's a huge understatement.
Thanks, Lan.
And I also like the part where when Egwene questions if Lan was seen by the Trollocs, and Nynaeve says, he was not seen. Nynaeve drew herself up as everyone lifted her. I followed his trail, remember? She's like, oh, believe me, I followed his trail. I know his skill. He's fine. Everything's fine.
Okay, yeah.
I just like that part.
It was very cute. I liked it. So Lan says there's a place the Trollocs won't go. Mm-hmm. And Moraine immediately shoots this down. We'll find out why a little bit later, but this is one of the few times when we see Lan and Moraine not just disagree, but openly argue in front of everybody else.
Right, definitely. I mean, they're kind of whisper arguing, like it's hushed, but they're still arguing in front of everybody, and that's kind of rare.
It is very rare.
So the group gets attacked by the Trollocs, and when they charge the Trollocs, Lan shouts his battle cry for the Seven Towers, and then the boys shout, Manatharin, which it's cute. But this is also the first time that Matt speaks the Old Tongue without realizing what he's doing.
Right.
And I'm not going to even attempt to try to read what that is.
No, that's cool.
We get enough flack for our bad pronunciations.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
even
true.
going to try.
It's true.
But what it means is, for the honor of the Red Eagle, for the honor of the Rose of the Sun, the Rose of the Sun. And Moraine says that this is the ancient war cry of Manatharin.
Yeah. Which is really cool.
Yeah.
Later, Egwene questions what Matt was crying out in the battle. She has a sense of familiarity. Like, she kind of understands the Old Tongue that Matt was saying.
It's like she almost can grasp it.
Yeah, almost. And when Moraine translates it, Egwene and Matt have slightly different reactions, but very distinct. Egwene is pleased or maybe excited about her connection to the old blood.
Yeah, definitely.
Moraine just flat out tells them that it's the old blood that sings. So there's this connection there that Egwene has. But Matt is not pleased at all.
No.
And Rand's point of view kind of helps explain, because Matt says, but wait, if I'm important, if I'm from this line, maybe they're here because maybe they came for me.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be...
I'm one of the three. Maybe it's me. Yeah, he doesn't want to be that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he doesn't want to be special or marked out in that way. So this is the first time that the Emmons Fielders are being battle tested. This is their first real fight. And Egwene and Nynaeve only have belt knives, which seems woefully inadequate. And it's kind of ironic because they are the two most powerful people there. Yep. They're both more powerful than Moraine is.
Yes, they are.
But they don't know how to use the power yet. So they're the most helpless.
Correct. It is kind of weird that they only have belt knives.
It's a belt knife against Trollocs seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah.
It's bad math.
So the first time I read this, this whole little thing about the Trollocs having catch poles, I was really confused by it. I thought they were a unique thing to the Wheel of Time.
Really?
I was very, very wrong. And I found out that these catch poles are things that were very common among infantry units that were going to face mounted cavalry.
Yeah, because if you can unseat a horseman, they're basically useless.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the problems with knights on horses. Knights aren't supposed to be mounted on a horse for this reason, because if you can get this visual picture of this catch pole pulls this knight off the horse, and he's just kind of flying there like a turtle. Yeah, so
like
that's
a beetle on his back.
Yeah, so that's why we have catch poles to pull people down off of horses.
Yeah.
So I thought it was unique to Wheel of Time, but I found out it wasn't. So my bad. Also, speaking of catch poles, Matt is the only person who gets unseated from his horse. Mm-hmm. And we find him. Rand looks down, and he's there with this noose around his neck.
Right.
Matt and nooses.
Get used to it, Matt.
Yeah, he's all over the place. So this is the first instance of Matt being wrapped up in a noose.
Definitely.
Just want to point that out.
So can we take a moment to talk about how strong Perrin is?
Right?
Rand saw Perrin half out of his saddle, struggling to wrest his axe away from 3 Trollocs.
Yeah.
They had him by one arm and both legs, but Perrin gets out of this. And yeah, okay, partly it's because Lan kills the Myrddraal, but it's also just from sheer strength. Perrin is a brute. Like, he is so big and so strong that he was able to stand up against 3 Trollocs.
It's almost like swinging that hammer in the smith, like, made him strong or something.
Yeah, it's like he's a blacksmith.
Yeah, maybe. The Trollocs die because they're linked to the Myrddraal. And this is the first, like, little bit of world building about the relationship between the two that we get, is that they're psychically linked. Like, a Myrddraal can be psychically linked to Trollocs. And if the Myrddraal dies while they're connected, they all die. So that's what happens here.
Even though the Myrddraal doesn't actually die right away.
Right.
That's the weird part. Like, Lan beheads him, but then I think it's Tom that says that the Myrddraal isn't going to die until nightfall. Yeah,
it just kind of like, it's body. Okay. I'm not going to launch into a really graphic farm story, but
yes, please don't.
when it is true that sometimes when an animal has its head cut off, it will continue to writhe.
Like a chicken?
Like a chicken or other animals. It will continue to writhe about as if it still had its head on. So it's that whole thing. I think that's where this is kind of being drawn from. Like, you behead a Myrddraal, and its body still thinks it's alive for a very long time. Now, it's flaying around on the ground. It can't stand up and fight you, but it can seriously damage you if you get near it.
Well, no. The book said the Myrddraal was still on its horse. It had no head, but it was still, like, flailing about from its horseback.
Right, it's flailing. So it's not like...
But it wasn't, like, laying on the ground. It was on the horse.
It's not like the Legend of Sleepy Hollow with, like, a headless horseman who can hunt you down. Like,
yeah. It doesn't have agency anymore.
Right, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
My bad.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's something like nightfall or sunset or something like that a Myrddraal doesn't actually die until that...
Until nightfall.
Yeah.
Correct.
Which is just weird.
It is.
So Moiraine faces down the next group of Trollocs, and she may say that she's not strongest with earth and fire, but what she did with the earthquake and the wall of fire was just major channeling.
Yeah.
That was pretty tight. Like, I mean, she's no slouch. Like, Moiraine is a very, very strong channeler, and she killed it.
She absolutely does. The waves of earth is just really, really cool.
It's great imagery, yeah.
It is. And I love how she follows up the waves of earth with fire. I mean, how many video games have I done that in? It's just really cool. I can't wait to see that if it ever becomes a TV show. That'll be awesome.
Oh, that'd be a good scene.
And then we find out later that one of the quirks of how the power works, the difference between men and women, is that women are generally not as strong in earth and fire as men are. So the fact that Moiraine can pull this off makes that even doubly cool.
Right. In general, earth and fire are not strong points for women, except for Egwene.
Yeah.
Egwene turns out to be really strong in earth especially. I can't remember about fire, but definitely earth. She has a special talent
like
there.
a talent there, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. In general, earth and fire are not strong points for women. So Moiraine is exhausted, and Nynaeve gives Moiraine an herb pack to keep her going while they're still on the run.
Right.
Even though Nynaeve hates Moiraine, she's still going to look after her health and give her an herb pack to make her feel better, because that's who Nynaeve is.
True.
Like, her personal feelings aside, if someone is suffering, she's going to take care of them.
Yeah.
Because she's awesome.
Ever the healer.
I really like the part where Moiraine lays the false trail.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
It was really neat and clever. And that's when Egwene talks about, oh, your staff is so powerful. And Moiraine's like, come on, fool, I already told you the power is not in an object, it's in a person. So let's talk about Moiraine's staff. I realize I've already made my feelings clear,
Just
but
a
I
bit.
just want to say it again. If the staff has no power, then why does she use it so much? I mean, she tells Egwene that it's an aid to concentration.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the White Tower would have broken a woman of the reliance on an aid of concentration or an aid for focus before she would be allowed to take the test for the shawl. From what we've seen of the White Tower in later books, and especially what we see in like New Spring, I don't see it. I don't see the White Tower allowing a woman to keep that dependency. And then it doesn't make sense. Like, if you've been broken of your dependence on objects, you take the test, you pass the test, you get through your first couple years of Days to Die when they finally let you out, why would you pick up an object again? It just doesn't make any sense. Now, maybe Robert Jordan was thinking ahead to like a TV or movie deal.
Maybe.
And having a staff would look cool, because I get that. But otherwise, I don't understand why we have the staff, and I don't like it.
Well, I've always come from it with the approach of like, this is kind of a groundbreaking series. Like he's taking things that have always been attributed to a Tolkien kind of fantasy or a high fantasy, and he's changing the status quo it was before this became a huge big series. And in those normal fantasy stories, the wise wizard always has a staff. Why? Because he's the wise wizard. And I've always just assumed that the reason we have the staff here, and we're going to see it get ditched later because it gets destroyed. I think part of the reason we have that is to make the story more accessible. These days, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, we have superhero stories, we have all this other stuff, and the staff is not necessarily always associated automatically to the wise wizard because there's no wise wizard characters anymore. It's the old wise man with a beard isn't who we think of as the magical person with the wisdom.
Right, but Moiraine isn't an old man with a beard.
Exactly, but she's the first that I can think of that was intended to fill that role of leadership that is usually done by the old wise and wizard.
Okay, I guess if I was more of a fan of like fantasy in general, I'd be more familiar with the tropes and stereotypes that the Wheel of Time is breaking. But since I'm not, I just don't like the staff.
And I don't want to pretend. I don't want to pretend like I'm an expert in fantasy. I could be completely wrong here, but I just always assumed that Moiraine is the new Gandalf. So let's bring her in as Gandalf. Gandalf has a staff, and later we prove that Moiraine is not in fact Gandalf. So we lose her staff. So I think it's just one of those subtle things he does to get us in and hooked. But then we're in a completely different world than we thought we were getting into.
Okay. I still don't have to like it.
And that is your prerogative. And that brings us to Chapter 19. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru is brought to you by Nynaeve's Herbs. Teas, tinctures, salves, and poultices. From Andalay root to worry not, whatever your illness or injury, Nynaeve's Herbs have the solution. When you run out of the power and swords can't help you, Nynaeve's Herbs can. Nynaeve's Herbs. Don't leave home without them.
Chapter 19 is called Shadows Waiting, and the icon is the ravens.
The group enters the ruined city of Shadar Logoth, and the boys are amazed with the size and scale of a real city. The group takes refuge in an abandoned building, and Nynaeve tends to Moiraine. Matt is concerned about what shouting the Old Tongue meant, but Tom reassures him that it simply means that his family has an old history, and to leave it at that. After getting the horses settled, Matt convinces Rand and Perrin to sneak off to explore. They foolishly agree to go have a look around and spend some time climbing all over the ruins. They're just thinking of heading back when they meet a strange man named Mordith, who tells them that he has discovered treasure and wants their help to carry it back to his horses. He says it's more than he can take with him, so they are welcome to keep the rest if they help him. Matt instantly agrees and goes harrying off into the shadows with Mordeth, and Perrin and Rand are forced to follow because they can't abandon their friend. Mordeth leads them deep underground to a huge treasure, which Matt immediately goes after. Matt thoughtlessly mentions Tarvalon, and Mordeth flips out. That's when Rand realizes that Mordeth doesn't have a shadow. He swells and distorts into a giant, filling the room and attacking the boys. Suddenly, Mordeth screams and shrinks back to normal size. He shrieks at them that they're all dead, and then turns into a tendril of smoke and escapes through a crack in the wall. Rand and Perrin have to drag Matt away from the treasure. Once back on the street, they feel eyes watching them from the shadows, and they race back to the rest of the group, followed by the unseen watchers. Once back at camp, they tell Moraine what happened, and she recognizes Mordeth's name. She forcefully questions them to see if he touched them, gave them anything, or had them do anything for him. Moraine tells them the story of Mordeth and the fall of Eredal, and the creation of the evil of Mashadar. She explains how Mordeth can never be allowed to escape the city. The chapter ends with Lan returning to say that a Myrddraal forced the Trollocs into Shadar Logoth, and they must escape across the river.
The boys realize how big a real city is and how small Berlin was.
Yeah, like Rand thinks to himself, Tom must have been laughing his ass off.
Yeah, he kind of was.
When we were, yeah. Absolutely he was.
So they come up on the city, and I like when an author gives us enough descriptive details that we can picture what it looks like. You can put yourself in the scene, but you don't feel like you're sitting in a college lecture about architecture.
Right. Yeah. It's a fine line so that you have enough description that you don't have white room syndrome.
Right.
Which is what I fall into. When I write, I definitely don't give quite enough description, at least not on the first pass. But at the same time, you also don't want someone to go on and on and on.
Looking at you, Tolkien.
Yeah. There's a reason I never got out of the Shire. So it's a fine line, and of course it's personal preference, but I think Jordan does a good job of describing, at least in the earlier books, describing without spending too much time.
Right. We definitely...
He gets more verbose later.
Yeah.
But early on, this is good.
Yeah, we definitely get a sense of Shadar Logoth's, like, the former glory and the sense of awe that it used to inspire.
Right. Definitely. All right. I want to read this section with Nynaeve.
Okay.
And then we can talk about it. I may not like her, it is true, Nynaeve was saying to the warder as Rand, leading Bella and Cloud, came in behind Tom. But I help anyone who needs my help, whether I like them or not. I made no accusation, Wisdom. I only said, have care with your herbs. She gave him a look from the corner of her eye. The fact is, she needs my herbs, and so do you. Her voice was acerbic to start and grew more tart as she spoke. The fact is, she can only do so much, even with her one power, and she has done about as much as she can without collapsing. The fact is, your sword cannot help her now, Lord of the Seven Towers, but my herbs can.
Oi. So, Nynaeve steps into it with Lan here.
Yeah.
And Moraine tries to soothe her over and basically says she simply doesn't know. I sometimes, especially when I started rereading them in the Eye of the World, I sometimes forget just how epic of a badass Lan is and how well known he is across all of Randland. He is known in the Borderlands. Even the Ale and the Waste know him. Like he has made a name for himself, and people know this man as the Lord of the Seven Towers. And for Nynaeve to just kind of throw that title at him and not have any clue of what's
rare.
behind that.
It's rare to find someone who doesn't know of Malkier or know of even Lan specifically. And so, yeah, for her to throw that in his face without understanding what she's saying, it's
because anyone in Caemlyn, anyone who's done any kind of fighting at all in any of the armies, kind of knows his story and the horrible tragedy that it is.
Right.
So yeah, it's just there's a moment there, and that's why Maureen kind of like tries to soothe Lan, like, hold on a second, she has no idea what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And So that's just it's just one of the things about this moment that just caught me. Like every now and then I forget that when you're back in the beginning, you don't know Land's rich history, and this stuff just kind of strikes me as like, oh wow, that was really, really mean.
Yeah, but she didn't mean to be mean. Like,
right.
She meant to clap back at him. Like she meant to bite, but not in that way. Because that's not who Nynaeve is. Like, she'll be prickly, but she doesn't lash out to wound.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, she wants to sting, but she doesn't want to wound.
Right.
And I think, even though nothing was really explained to her, I think the looks that she and Lan exchange, she realizes that something happened.
Yeah.
She just doesn't know what.
Right. And later she actually, she finds out. But, yeah, so I just wanted to kind of stop and say, wow, that was pretty big.
Yeah, it's true.
Another interesting thing that caught my eye this time through is as the boys are hobbling the horses, Perrin is taking care of Mandarb. Mm-hmm. Let me restate that. Mandarb is letting Perrin take care of him.
Right.
Because he's a Shinoran-trained warhorse. He is not going to let anybody touch him.
Yeah, I assume that Lan handed off the reins to Perrin, in which case Mandarb would be trained to allow that if he sees Lan hand off the reins.
Right.
But yeah, otherwise, there's no way he would have let Perrin take care of him.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that Perrin is taking care of him because he is the strongest of the bunch.
Yeah, he's probably the only one strong enough to handle Mandarb.
True. But I just found it really weird. Oh, he's not, and Mandarb's okay with this. Okay.
Yeah. So Matt's really upset still about the whole Old Tongue thing. And there's this little quote. I was thinking about what happened back there, about those words. Everybody turned to look at him then, not just Rand, and he shifted uneasily. Well, you heard what Moraine said. It's as if some dead man was speaking with my mouth. I don't like it.
Oh, Matt.
Considering what happens to Matt later, that's hilarious.
we just summed up Matt's entire experience for the rest of the series after he gets,
Yeah. I just thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
And then we have this little section where Tom freaks out. Mm-hmm. So, Perrin says, I think you'd like that, being a king and a hero reborn. Don't say that. Tom drew a deep breath. Everybody stared at him now. That is dangerous talk, stupid talk. The dead can be reborn or take a living body, and it is not something to speak of lightly. He took another breath to calm himself before going on. The old blood, she said. The blood, not a dead man. I've heard that it can happen sometimes. Heard, though I never really thought. It was your roots, boy. A line running from you to your father, to your grandfather, right on back to Mantherin and maybe beyond. Well, now you know your family is old. You ought to let it go at that and be glad. So...
yeah.
This is a little weird.
It seems a little out of place, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Why is Tom freaking out?
Exactly. I don't know. It felt a little strange to me.
Okay. So I have a theory about why Tom freaks out here, but I want to put a pin in it, and we'll come back to it in a bit.
Okay. All right. Well, then that brings us to the part of the chapter where the boys go adventuring. Yeah. So, okay. This chapter is a really big reminder of how young and inexperienced these boys are.
Yes.
They make really stupid decisions, and they act really gullible. And the thing is, they're 20 years old. Rand, Matt, and Perrin are 20. But especially in this chapter, they act way younger than that.
Yes, they do.
I mean, they, to me, act like 15, maybe 16-year-old boys.
Yeah, I agree.
Which, I don't know. I
mean, I've seen college frat boys act really, really dumb and childish when they get together too, but
yeah,
that's not the situation. And these they should be a little smarter than this.
I would think so. But, their frontal lobes have not fully formed.
True.
So
True.
I do like how when they meet Mordeth, okay, so here's what the book says. I am Mordeth. He paused as if expecting them to recognize the name. When none of them gave any sign of doing so, he muttered something under his breath and went on. I feel like Mordeth is like, these kids today. And I love that he has the plight of like minor celebrities that never get recognized, where he expects them to know who he is and they don't. He's like, I hate my life.
Basically, that's exactly what he does.
Exactly.
I hate my life. So kind of going back to your comment about the boys being young and making stupid decisions. When something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
You can't go through life suspicious of everybody, but you also can't be this trusting and gullible as,
right.
Hey, boys, I have some treasure. You want to come and see it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, let me, as a stranger, just walk up to you and offer you riches for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like,
Stranger
on,
danger?
get your shit
Seriously?
together.
Come on. Yeah. Yeah. And again, in addition to being gullible, Matt and his epic big mouth,
right?
Like he thoughtlessly tells this guy where they're going. We're going to Tar-Valon, and that's what triggers, Mordeth to freak out.
Yeah, it's like he's so distracted by the treasure, he stops thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Matt doesn't do a whole lot of thinking to begin with, so when
Especially
he loses focus, it's all over.
Yeah, young Matt, early book Matt is really, really clueless when it comes to thinking.
Yeah. Let's talk about Mordeth and his attack.
Okay.
So he swells up like a giant.
Yep.
And he's attacking the boys, and he knocks Rand over and knocks the wind out of him, and things look a little dire.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly he screams this agonized scream, and then shrinks back to normal size.
Right.
And it seems kind of out of nowhere and unexplained, but then the book says, Matt peered around the side of a treasure pile, clutching a dagger snatched from the trove.
Mm.
So I think what happened is that Mordeth got pricked or stabbed by the dagger, and that's what saved them.
Okay.
And
okay.
We know that the dagger is tainted, and
it's a piece of the city. Yeah.
Yeah, it's death to anyone who gets even the tiniest scratch, except because Mordeth is trapped there,
mm-hmm.
And he has already sort of been surrounded and absorbed by the evil of Mashadar, and he's kind of absorbed all the evil and the taint of Shadar Logoth.
Mm-hmm.
I think the dagger hurts him enough to stop him, but it wouldn't instantly kill him because he's already got the taint.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think he gets nicked here, and it hurts. That's why he retreats and is completely paranoid when he does it, because the whole evil of Eredal, what brought it down was this huge big anxiety and panic and mistrust of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's what brought him down.
Right.
So he retreats to the side in the corner and huddles in a ball like he's afraid.
Yeah, I didn't catch this whole dagger part until subsequent readings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember the first time I read it, I was like, I don't understand what happened. I don't know what interrupted this, because the boys were screwed.
Right.
But this time I noticed the thing with the dagger, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
I think you're absolutely right here.
Okay, cool. And then, after all of this goes down, Rand and Perrin have to physically drag Matt from the treasure.
Yes.
Now, they both know enough to know that they don't want any part of it.
Right.
But Matt is overwhelmed by his greed. And it seems a little much to me. Do you think this is mystical, or do you think it's... okay, so we know that Matt is greedy. He is focused on money and treasure.
Yes, he is.
But this seems like more than normal to me. So I'm wondering if you feel like there's something mystical, something about this treasure that's got its hold on Matt,
mm-hmm.
more than what we would have come to expect from Matt.
I absolutely think it is.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. And here's my completely headcanon, no proof, but fight me on this. I'll go for it.
Okay. You heard it here, folks.
Because we just saw Matt use the dagger for the first time.
Uh-huh.
And Matt's first use of the dagger is to cut somebody with it.
Right.
There's now a bond between Matt and that blade. Because he used the blade to defend himself
and save his life. So you think that started here, not just from carrying it around, but...
Yes, I think the reason that the Shadow Logoth dagger is able to take Matt and start corrupting him as he goes on in the next couple books is because the bond was formed. He used that dagger to save his life. That dagger now is tied to him in a quote-unquote mystical kind of way. So I absolutely think it's mystical, and I think that the dagger wants him to stay there with the rest of the treasure.
Oh, okay. I'll buy it.
Yeah.
All right. So when they finally get Matt back out on the street...
Finally.
The book says, "At least we're out of it." Matt got up from the bottom of the pile, dusting himself off in a shaky imitation of his usual manner. "And at least are we?" Perrin said. Matt was gonna mention the dagger, and then Perrin interrupted him.
Yep.
Like, if Perrin hadn't interrupted him, Matt would have mentioned the dagger, shown it to Perrin and Rand, and then they could have told Moraine, and none of that would have happened.
Yeah.
So, damn it, Perrin. First you don't check the hayloft, and now you're interrupting things.
That's 2 strikes, Perrin. 2.
Just kidding, of course. I mean,
we
Matt's
love
an
Perrin.
idiot. But
Yeah, this is Matt's fault 100%, but it's not Perrin's fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
As they head back to the others, they where they're camped for the night, the feeling of watchers is really creepy.
It is, yeah.
And if there's one thing I learned watching the X-Files when I was young, it's that the thing that you can't see is actually worse than the thing that you can see.
Definitely.
Because your mind just makes it worse as you go. So that's just something I noticed here as they were walking back. And then when they do get back, Nynaeve has every right to call the boys out, and she does. They were being irresponsible and stupid, and she knows that it's totally Matt's fault, too.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
She's like, Matt's doing, no question about it.
So they're back, and they're harried, and like, it's obviously something going on. So they spill the beans, and then Moraine tells the story of Mordeth and Shadow Logoth, which is really important for the rest of at least the next 2 books, because this is completely outlining what's going to happen with Matt.
Right.
Right.
So both of these chapters are very Lord of the Rings to me, but especially the story about the history of Mordeth and like it reminds me of Wormtongue poisoning the king's mind, and it's so Lord of the Rings. Like, it's very, very close.
Yeah, we get this whole huge, big, elaborate history of this once glorious thing that kind of falls, and we're in the ruins of a city, just like we were in the Mines of Moria and the Fellowship of the Ring.
Well, yeah, how Moraine didn't want to go to Shadow Logoth in the first place, but they were kind of driven there.
Yeah.
It's the same way how Gandalf didn't want to go to the Mines of Moria, but they had no choice.
I mean, a little bit, we're going to get chased out by Trollocs.
Yeah, and like the Trolloc horns approaching reminded me of like the orc horns.
Yep.
And yeah, like this is the whole Mordeth and the king and everything is very Wormtongue. It's very, very Lord of the Rings. Like, more so here than any point so far.
Right.
It's a very similar story. So I'm not going to cover too much about the history of Eredol or any of that, but there were a couple things that stuck out to me. The victory of the light is all. That was the battle cry Mordeth gave them, and the men of Eredol shouted it while their deeds abandoned the light. That reminds me so much of the White Cloaks.
Yes.
You know, like claiming the glory of the light while doing truly despicable things.
Yes.
So it totally makes sense that when Mordeth finally does escape, he attaches himself to the White Cloaks for a while. Like, it
Yes,
makes perfect sense.
Because they're his peeps.
They are totally his peeps. They're, like, exactly designed to fall prey to what he does.
Exactly.
And then it says, no enemy had come to Eridal but Eridal. Suspicion and hate had given birth to something that fed on that which created it, something locked in the bedrock on which the city stood. Mashadar waits still, hungering. Men spoke of Eridal no more. They named it Shadow Logoth, the place where the shadow waits, or more simply, shadows waiting. So she's saying that the suspicion and hate that Mordeth spread created Mashadar.
Correct.
Okay.
It fed something that was already... I believe the imagery here is that it was already in the foundation. Like, there was some kind of evil that already existed that this hate and this fear fed and morphed into something big.
I'm a little confused about the difference between Mashadar's power and Mordeth's power. So one more thing to read. If ever he convinces someone to accompany him to the walls, to the boundary of Mashadar's power, he will be able to consume the soul of that person. Mordeth will leave, wearing the body of the one he worse than killed, to wreak his evil on the world again. So, Mordeth's power was to poison the minds of the people and fill them with suspicion and paranoia.
Yes.
Until they turned on each other.
Correct.
In their self-righteousness?
Well, no, and they're just... I think the story of Eridal is a unique thing because they already had that sense of anything for the light built into them. And when you feed paranoia into that kind of ecosystem already, that creates the we're so afraid of you. It's witch hunts. You start like second guessing everything, and then you persecute them for not being good enough to hit the standard. That's what Mordeth fed into that situation.
So then what is Mashadar's power? Like, I don't understand the difference.
Mashadar's power, as I understand it, is that it feeds on the hate and the anger and the fear. So it's kind of like a nuclear reaction. You know, you got the uranium, you got the plutonium. Together, they're not that bad of a thing. They can kill you from radiation poisoning, but you combine them together, and they cause a positive feedback loop that just keeps building and building and building and building, and that's why it blows up. So you put Mordeth into the situation where Mashadar already existed in some form, is what I'm kind of thinking here. And as Mordeth is feeding the paranoia and the complete just craziness into this city, the thing underneath it is eating all of that and feeding off of the energy. Right,
but then what does it do? Because, like, I feel like there are three things where their power is similar, and I don't understand the difference. It's Mordeth, it's Mashadar, and then it's Machin Shin, the thing in the waves.
Oh, yes, the thing in the waves.
I feel like all three of those, the power that they have, like the damage that they do, is very, very similar, and I don't really understand the difference. And it might be too early to talk about Machin Shin because I might have to read that part again.
We'll talk about it when we get to the ways. But I think the answer to your question is that they're all, like specifically for Mordeth and Mashadar, they have a symbiotic relationship. Like Mordeth incites, and then Mashadar feeds off of the same thing. So what is his power? Mordeth's power is to make people completely paranoid. And we'll see that happen throughout the rest of the series. And then Mashadar's power is to consume.
It sucks the soul out of them?
Yeah, it sucks the soul out of things.
Okay.
But specifically, I think it feeds on the fear and the hate and the anger.
So if it sucks the soul out of a person and kind of leaves them like an empty shell, how is that different from Machin Shin in the ways? Because doesn't that do the exact same thing?
You know, I'm gonna take a cop-out answer and say
it doesn't matter. It's just bad.
Well, there's a very clearly documented line of questioning that Brandon Sanderson recently put out, which is that there are a number of secrets to the Wheel of Time that no one has figured out yet, that Robert Jordan left for him in trust.
Oh, okay.
And
so it's just one of those secrets.
You may be touching on something like that.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's fair. You don't have to know.
Because
I mean, neither one of us are claiming to be experts. And I'm totally putting you on the spot right now.
But I agree with you. I want to know, is there a connection between Mashadar and Mashinshen?
Yeah. Because I'm thinking forward many, many books. When Rand goes back to Shatter Logoth with Loyal's mom and the elder
Hammond?
Yeah. And Aerith? Is that her name?
Yes.
And his, guard of
Ashaman.
no. The female ale, yeah.
Yes, the maidens. Maidens of the Spear.
You wouldn't think that would be that hard for me to remember. Yes, the maidens. And, he loses one. Remember? I think Leah. And then when he's fighting whoever it is, I think it's Samael or Ishmael or something.
Samael.
And she, her body is there.
Yep.
Animated corpse doing whatever is happening. She was she was an empty shell, but she was being directed by something, and she had obviously been taken by Mashadar.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to remember how that power manifested, what Mashadar actually did to her.
I'm not sure. And honestly, I think this is definitely something we should talk about more in depth when we get to there.
In a few years.
In a few years? Yeah, because that's Lord of Chaos.
Is it? I don't know. It's a while.
Yeah, it's a while.
Yeah, I think it is Lord of Chaos. Is that the one where he conquers Ilion?
Yes.
Then yeah, it's the end of Lord of Chaos. Where they cross the streams? That's that book, right?
That's that book. It's all the same battle. Absolutely. So coming back to this book.
So basically the answer is I don't know. We'll worry about it later.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
But I do want to take the opportunity to pull the pin out on the thing I would say let's talk about.
Okay.
So the whole idea of we've got if he ever convinces anyone to accompany him outside the walls to the boundary, Mashadar's power, he'll be able to consume the soul of that person. Mordith will leave wearing the body of the one that he worse than killed. This is what happens to Padden Fane.
Yes.
This is also exactly what Tom Maryland was talking about when we were hobbling the horses.
That's what he was freaking out about.
Which tells me this Gleeman knows more than he should. Because he knows this story and he knows the implications. He knew from the moment they entered that city what danger they were in.
Oh, okay.
So that's my little
so this is
revelation for this read-through.
Specifically is what he was freaking out about.
Yes.
That actually makes sense. That makes a lot more sense.
That's why he was so intense about it.
Okay.
But if you hadn't brought it up, I would have never connected the dots. And it just came to me through this read-through. So, yeah.
Okay.
It only took me 10 times. But
I know, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot in these books.
So, Nynaeve is worried that Lan has been gone for such a long time.
Right, because Lan goes to look for the boys, right?
Yeah. So, he leaves after the boys have left, and the boys have been back, and we've talked about all this stuff. We've had the history of Adderall, we've had all this stuff, and he's still not back. Yeah. So Nynaeve's getting a little worried. And Moiraine tries to soothe Nynaeve.
Right.
And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because this is one of the few times, especially in the first book, where they're not at each other. For the first time, it's not adversarial.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I mean, Moiraine isn't very adversarial towards Nynaeve.
True.
It's Nynaeve that's always adversarial
she's
towards Moiraine.
Yeah.
I mean, Moiraine does get angry at Nynaeve a lot, but she doesn't start it.
She doesn't go looking for a fight.
Yeah.
Where Nynaeve is.
I mean, sometimes. She needles Nynaeve sometimes. But, but you're right. It is nice to see them getting... I don't know if getting along is right, but it's nice to see them on the same side.
Right. Because they're both worried about Lan.
Yeah. So Lan does eventually come back, and he brings
Some really
proof
great
that there are Trollocs in the city. The city where Trollocs are afraid to go. And then he's very disturbing when he says, "Only this," Lan said slowly. "The Myrddraal forced the Trollocs into the city. What forced the Myrddraal?" That's just unsettling to think about.
Did we talk about why the Myrddraal and the Trollocs are afraid to come into the
We
city?
skipped over it. It was all part of the history lesson that
Yeah.
Moraine gives. That it was, massive shadow spawn slaughter.
And, you know, Trolloc blood written on the walls with basically all kinds of stuff saying don't ever come back, and, you know, like basically come back. Yeah, it's one of those mass murder scenes, but it was committed against Trollocs and Myrddraal.
Yeah. We skipped over it. But yeah, I mean, the reason the Trollocs don't come is because they are afraid to.
They are
because
afraid.
it's part of Trolloc legend that this is the place Trollocs go to die. So the fact that the Myrddraal forced the Trollocs into the city is bad enough, but then Lan poses the question, who forced the Myrddraal?
Yeah, which is a very good question.
That's really unsettling to think about, because you don't want to meet what a Myrddraal's afraid of.
Nope. So we're on the run again.
Yay!
And more, but before we keep going, like, Moraine takes a second to give Nynaeve props for her herbs.
Because
Yay.
her herbs are good.
Yes, they are. Absolutely. We also find out an interesting bit that Trollocs are afraid of deep water, much like ring wraiths.
Yeah, so what's the deal with fantasy stories and bad guys being afraid of water? Like, what is that?
I think it's running water, especially like water from a river, water from a stream, is always seen as like a symbol of purity. And like bad guys have a hard time crossing it because it's a symbol of purity, I think. I think it's one of those things. I think that's why we see it so much. Like, clear running water is as close to like the perfect purity you're going to find in a pre-industrial society. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't get that, but all right.
It's a thing.
All right. Well, that ends chapters 18 and 19 of The Eye of the World. In next week's episode, all hell breaks loose with a mad dash through the streets of Shadow Logoth, where even worse than Trollocs and Myrddraal await.
Dum dum dum.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I broke you. I'm sorry.
It's fine. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you grab your podcasts. Maybe leave us a positive review. It really helps us out.
We show up on the results.
Yeah, we do, and recommendations and other stuff like that. So you can also tweet us at Pod-Thru, or you can email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com. Tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today. We want to engage in a conversation with you.
Yeah, that's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon. I didn't have to say community.